Rob, you'll never fully understand how much I suck at this. But I'm promised that I'd do it, so I'm going to do it regardless. It's Friday the 13th. I got a new snowball mic. Dance Gavin Dance made an awesome new song off their new album, Instant Gratification. So, why not go all in, I guess? I'm going to review your book and hope it comes out well this time, because I've done this review a bunch of times and it sucked. But I'm hoping it's the last time I have to record it. Hoping that I can pace myself and don't sing. Fingers crossed, right? Okay. So let's try to get this train wreck on its correct track. And I'll start here. This book is really good, Rob. It's really good. I can't explain it to you as well as I think I should, but it's really good. So, to do this to the bare minimum, I'm going to explain 2 parts of this 3-part story of Bloodsucking Fiends. The first part of this story is called, well, I keep part, I'm going to get Acts. The first act of this story is called Fledgling. In the first act of the story, we meet Jody, our main character, if you think about it in a certain way. We see her coming home from a party. We get a little insight to how she lives her life, and we meet, and we get a little bit insight in her life. We get to meet the Emperor of San Francisco, who's a returning character from A Dirty Job, which was the book that I read, I think, my middle school year in high school, and I really loved it to death. We made me really happy he was writing this story, but moving on from that. Jody leaves something. Jody leaves a party, and she gets attacked by a random person, and she gets left under a dumpster, and wakes up in the morning and realizes something was not quite wrong with her. And after she has this weird moment of trying to figure out what's going on with her life, and trying to figure out why time has passed and things she doesn't understand, we jump to our other character, Tommy. Tommy kind of has a weird reason for ending up in this city, but once he gets there, he's stuck there for a really funny reason. Now, once he gets there, he kind of gets this weird place and tries to move on with his life, well, pick up where he's been stuck at currently. He runs into the Emperor of San Francisco, and the Emperor gets him a job at Safeway. This transitions us into meeting the animals. The animals will be a interesting part of this story. They're a bunch of fun, rambunctious guys that smoke a little too much weed and have a lot of fun. But they're, in my opinion, a great thing that the story needed. We then jump back to Jody, who's figured out that she's a vampire, and she's had an interesting moment with figuring out how her powers work and understanding what it is to lust for blood. Jumping back to Tommy, we find out a little bit about where he's staying, and find out a hilarious thing about with his scare that the Emperor gave him about telling the Emperor tells him that there are vampires in the city. And Tommy has a weird moment, which gets resolved in the funniest way possible. And Tommy runs into Jody. Jody officially figured out that going outside's not good for vampires. It burns you. So, she needs someone to do things for her, which is how she runs into Tommy. Tommy, being a young kid in a big city, is pushed by a cute girl, of course does the first thing that comes to any guy in that situation. He agrees to do things for her. Throughout that little bit of time, we see that Jody and Tommy have a small interest in each other, and they get an apartment. And Tommy actually gets his first brush with what he believes to be likeness, and Jody meets a new person that she would not have thought was possible in fledgling, more or less there. Next act in this story is nesting. Nesting is nesting, we learn a little bit more about the vampire that changed Jody. And we also learn a little bit about little tidbits of what's happening in fledgling. Since this story has started, there's been a vampire in the city, and the Emperor has been a little concerned about it. And for good reason. The core base of nesting is that there is a vampire going around and he's killing people. But instead of being a vampire who hides these things, he's leaving bodies around places and following Jody around. The reason for this actually is really interesting, and it gets explained throughout nesting. And it's actually a really interesting reason. Also, throughout nesting, there is being in a big city. There are cops around this story. Someone's killing people, and there are cops trying to figure out and make heads or tails of how a person can be killed with all the blood being drained out of them. The two cops who are actually investigating this case are Nick and Riviera. I cannot pronounce Nick's last name. I called him Corvo. I know that's probably not right. The Spanish is just not my language of choice. French and Japanese are. But Nick and Riviera are investigating this thing, which leads to this separate line who intersects from Tommy, Jody, and the animals. And intersects with all those lines. Now, to give a little bit of information, the animals are enjoying their life, and we find a little bit about each of the people in this group of guys that work at Safeway. Jody's figuring out her powers, and she's becoming a night predator. More interesting about nesting is that there's a small cameo for a dirty job. Because I'm currently reading Bite Me, I have not had time to go back and reread A Dirty Job to actually see if that point's in there. And I have the Bang Chronicles and City of Heavenly Fire to react to that. So I'll get to that eventually. I'll get back to you if that actually is a direct cameo. But there is a cameo. There's a cameo in it that we actually see Jody walk into. I forget his name right now. It's kind of bad, actually. You see a cameo from the main character, Charlie Asher. We get to see a cameo of Charlie in his shop. And interesting in that little cameo, we also find out this version of vampire, because there will always be different incarnations of vampires throughout history. Everyone will write them differently. We find out this interesting thing, what happens if a vampire drinks a person dry and keeps going. There's also a few other interesting little vampire things that Christopher Moore made, but I think this little thing that we find out about what happens if a vampire drink too much blood, it's really interesting. And it also gives, and that's found out, it gives more interest into why this vampire is killing people and leaving them anywhere. But as I think I said, he explains his reason in a little bit and gives us a small justification for it. Now, that's all happening in its own time frames. We have this evil vampire trying to lead police to Jodie. We have Jodie figuring out what it is to be a vampire and her interest in Tommy. We have Tommy working at Safeway and him trying to deal with his life and trying to be this weird boyfriend to a vampire. And we have him interacting with the animals and them living their lives and Tommy keeping this secret from them. And while that's happening, we have the Emperor who's going all around his city and he's slowly trying to figure things out. And while he's trying to figure these things out, he's gaining little bits of information and living his life. And we see his view of what's going on with the city, which actually is really interesting. And all of that sweeps together. Plus we have two cops who are trying to figure out who's responsible for these murders, and they get on the wrong trail to who could be responsible for it. There's also a small person in this story who has a very interesting role and offers Jodie a really interesting alternative to her lifestyle as a vampire. That actually is about everything that will come together in nesting without me ruining too much. The last act of this story is Hunters. I can't tell you what happens in Hunters because as a person that's worked in the theater, I can't tell you what happens in the third act because it may discourage you from actually wanting to read it for yourself. So I won't ruin that part for you, I guess. Now, what I can say about this story as a whole after reading it twice is that it's a really interesting take on vampire stories. It's really well thought out, well written. Christopher Moore books actually are really good that way. It really did take a lot of human aspects into it, and it's really about the people in the story. And it really made me enjoy it that much more. Because it took logical choices and made a lot of interesting insights into what people do. Now, I want to leave you with something, I guess. So, I'll try this. Happy Friday the 13th! It's Friday the 13th, Rob. And, yeah. I forgot. I haven't told you about this random band I listen to called Dance Gavin Dance. You can laugh now because apparently I've looked into it and apparently they're an emo band. But they have the greatest lead singer. Well, not as good as Patrick Fall Out Boy. But their melody is amazing and I love how they've grown over the years. And they have released interesting song titles. This current album that they're releasing is called Instant Gratification. And the song I've been listening to since I actually started talking for the book review is called Wheel of Night. I really do love it, and I can't wait until April 17th when they release it. And I wait a week and a half for the pre-order stuff to get here. But, can't wait for that. But because this book review is over, I want to tell you something else I'm going to do so I can make sure I keep checking things. I'm thinking about doing something funny. I'm thinking about unboxing all of the things that I've gotten since you've moved. So I might make a video about unboxing all the many special things that I have and slowly talk about the new random things that I have. Because you're not here for it, so I might as well show it to you. Because telling things to someone is not as good as having them experience it. So, yeah. Oh, Rob, please check my DeviantArt. I'm planning on taking a bunch of pictures this weekend, and I'm going to put a bunch on there, and I hope you enjoy those too. So, yeah. Happy Friday the 13th. Hope you enjoy your day. I really love this song On the Run. Sorry. We on the Night, and I've listened to it a bunch of times now. So I'm going to let you go, and I will leave you with this last thing. I really miss talking to you and doing these things, but I'm happy that we kind of collectively had this idea to do this for you. It's really helping me get through everything, and I really do miss you. Later, Rob.